So let's start with those optional behaviors. Today we're going to talk about automatic solve mode, auto insert dimension, instant 2D, on-screen numeric input, and preview sketch dimension. Let me switch over to SOLIDWORKS and give you an example on those. So if anyone's familiar with this game that I like, Settlers of Catan, we're going to take inspiration from some of the game pieces and use those for what we're going to sketch. Let's start with the ship. Okay, so this is our final shape. Let's just start with a new part and draw it from scratch. So in my new part, I'm going to sketch on the front plane. Actually, before I start sketching, I've been playing around with my system options. So let me go into system options under sketch category. And I just want to hit reset this page to make sure I'm at all the defaults. And while I'm here, I want to point out one of the defaults that's already on. Scale sketch on first dimension creation. It's already on by default, so you don't have to do anything to get to it. I just want to point that out that that is on, and I want to show the benefits of it. So let me just grab a line, and I don't have to pay attention to what scale it is that I'm sketching, right? I just start sketching the shape that I'm interested in. Let me hover over that endpoint to switch to arc and just click, click, click to create the shape that I want. Now, the first dimension that I put on, maybe I get a smart dimension off of my shortcut toolbar, and I click this down, and I really want 14 millimeters. So I type 14, enter, and watch the flash that you see on the screen. That was that scale that SOLIDWORKS did based on the first dimension that I put down. It scaled the sketch so that it could solve that 14 millimeters, and yet the whole rest of the sketch stayed in its relative shape. Now, here's the problem. What if I missed the click? Let me hit one undo to get back to, maybe as I set that dimension down, I accidentally clicked OK before entering the value, or maybe I typoed the number and I put 114 instead of just 14. Actually, I think I want 12, but it doesn't matter, whatever the case. I typoed the number. And so now I've lost the benefit of that scale. And I think, well, let me just continue on, putting my dimensions. I want this to be 6. Holy smokes. And I want this to be 9. And right? I'm getting all tangled up. Now, perhaps I could just keep going. As long as you can still get to the sketch entities that you want, you could potentially just continue on putting your dimensions and straighten it all out. But sometimes you just get too tangled up and it's not worth it and you can't straighten it out. So let's undo a couple again back to this point. And what I want to do to help with the issue is I want to change one of my options. Now, this one is actually not inside the system options. It's actually a sketch setting. You can get to it in your tools pull down menu, sketch settings, and it's called automatic solve. As you can see, it is on already by default. And that means that as I enter those dimensions, it immediately solves and changes the geometry to fit those dimensions and relations that I put on. But I can turn that off. It doesn't have any button. Unfortunately, you can't customize it onto any toolbar or anything. There's no button. You can only just dig it out of the tools pull down menu here. Or a little bit faster is hit your S shortcut toolbar and type a AU, and that'll bring it right at the tip of your mouse at least. So I'm going to uncheck automatic solve. And now I'm going to continue on with my dimensions. At the same time, I want to show you another one of those bullet points that we had, another dimensioning tool, is called Auto Insert Dimension. So I select the first line. I want the length of that line. And instead of going for Smart Dimension, I'm going to go Auto Insert Dimension. What this is going to do is save me a click on this one, first of all. I didn't have to click, pull away from the line and click the dimension down for the Modify Dimension dialog box. It just comes right up. And then it'll tell me put my dimension. Now I entered the 6 and nothing happened because I have automatic solve mode off. Right? That's a function of automatic solve mode. The auto insert dimension means I can just continue on selecting individual sketch entities like the line, the length of this line, and with just a single click, the dimension is set down and I'm in the modify dimension dialog box. So this is auto insert dimension. Now it does have some limitations. I can do the length of lines. I could do from endpoint to endpoint, but if I do from endpoint to endpoint, I can only get the normal distance. I can't toggle between the vertical dimension, the normal dimension, or the horizontal dimension as I could with a true smart dimension. So if what you want is the lengths of individual lines or the normal dimensions, you could go ahead and use this. If it's not what you want, I'm just going to delete that and turn off the auto insert dimension and go for my regular smart dimension, which has the full capability of switching between the vertical, the normal, and the horizontal in order to put on these final 2 dimensions. I think I have everything. How about a midpoint on this bottom? And now I'm ready to go back to that toggle. So SAU for start typing automatic. So I get automatic solve back on. Now it solved those dimensions. Oh, I thought I had everything, but nope, I was missing just a little bit, which is how about that I want these to be collinear and I want a height here of 5 millimeters. But the amount that I had left after I turned on the automatic solve so that I was able to see what turned black, what was still able to move, I was able to still just straighten that out with a couple of additional dimension or relation, it didn't get all tangled up on me. So let me double click to exit the sketch and hold the M key as I pull out on the arrow there to get a midplane extrusion. And there's my ship with just a little fillet action, and my ship is ready to go. How about all of those get a 0.5 millimeter fillet? Now I'm done. Let me do it again with some different options on because I need a larger version of this. And so, of course, normally I would do a save as and just change the dimensions, but I want to have another opportunity to sketch this with some different options on. So let me just hit a new part, a new sketch on the front plane. And this time I want to go in my system options to show you 2 more things. Enable on-screen numeric input on entity creation and preview sketch dimension when selected is what I want to show you next. Now, you actually don't need to come into your system options for those 2 unless you want this little sub option under enable on-screen numeric input on entity creation. If I only want to create dimensions when a value is entered, then I have to come in here into the system options. Otherwise, after I've set this one to how I want it, I don't have to come back into the system options to toggle the other 2 on or off. I'll show you where to get those just in the graphics area right at the tip of your mouse. So let's start sketching. And this time, I am going to pay a little bit more attention to the scale. I'm going to get a little within reason, where I want the origin, because with the on-screen numeric input, I just click down one end of my line. And then I do watch for the horizontal automatic sketch relation. But instead of clicking the second end of my line, I go ahead and type the value. That's the on-screen numeric input. And then it's still chaining. So I just pull up. Now this one, again, this is just like the auto insert where you can only get the normal dimensions. You can't get the vertical or horizontal. So I don't want this one. I don't want the length of this line. So I'm just going to ignore it. That's that sub option that said only create a dimension if I actually enter a value. Now in this one, I want the horizontal. So I do snap down to that automatic horizontal sketch relation. And then I go ahead and type the value that I want. Pull up, type a value, enter. Hover to switch the arc. I don't want the radius, so I just ignore that. Click down and click down and click down. Now, the rest of the dimensions I'm going to get with the second option that I turned on in the system options, which is the preview. What that means is when I select any sketch entity, you see this little gray preview that shows up of the dimension? If I want that dimension, I just click on it to get that dimension and turn it into an actual dimension. If I don't want the dimension, I just ignore it. Like for example, if I control select these two horizontal lines, it's offering me a preview of a 180-degree angle dimension, but I don't want that. The reason why I clicked on those two lines was to make them collinear. So I just ignore the preview of the sketch dimension and I go for whatever else I control selected those for off of the context pop-up toolbar, like make collinear. In this case, I control select these two lines. I do want this distance here. So I'll click it and say, yep, I want that to be, oh, actually I forgot this is I'm making a bigger ship. So I want it doubled at 10. And now again, I can't get the vertical. I could only get the normal distance. So I will just have to switch to a regular smart dimension if I want the vertical dimension there. Or in this case, I could make this one even smarter than the other. And I could say, well, I want to double click to get my full modified dimension dialog box and say that that's equal to this one plus 8. Lovely. So I like the preview sketch dimension because I can just bounce back and forth between doing dimensions and relations without having to get out of that smart dimension tool. It's ideal to put relations, sketch relations first, and then go back through and put all the dimensions, but sometimes you just don't always think of it. I think of a couple relations and then I think of a couple dimensions, and then I realize, oh, I don't want to put, two of the same number. I want to put an equal. And so I go back to relations. And so with the preview, I can just bounce back and forth, control selecting each thing and either turning on the dimension or turning on the sketch relation that I was looking for. One more little tidbit, which is another option, which is Instant 2D. Whenever I select any of these dimensions, notice the giant blue balls on the extension lines. I can just drag those and change the value. That's a function of Instant 2D. If you drag off of the scale, you can get any value. If you drag right on the scale, it will snap. So you can get a nice round number. The other thing that Instant 2D will get you is if I don't need the full modified dimension dialog box, I just single click. If all I need to do is change the value, single click, type your value, hit enter, and you're done. Instant 2D you can find here on the sketch tab of the command manager. It has the dark background. It's already pushed in. It's on by default out of the box. And it's just a mode that stays on until you toggle it off. With it off, I can't single click to change the value, and I can't get those drag handles to just drag to change the value. I have to double click and get into the modify dimension dialog box in order to change the value. So again, turn it on or off as necessary. Sometimes you need to get all the way into the modify dimension dialog box to use the reverse, or if you had multiple configurations, this is where you would specify whether the change was to this configuration or all configurations, then you need to get all the way in. But if you don't need to get all the way in, it's nice to have Instant 2D on and just single click to change the dimension value. Okay, so let's talk about what I do not sketch. Notice I did not sketch the fillets inside of this. I did not put the arcs on the corners. I'm doing those with a fillet feature. Rule of thumb is if you don't need, I'm not going to say rule of thumb, I'm just going to say just plain rule. If you don't need the arcs inside of the sketch, then don't put them in the sketch. Now, this arc I clearly needed. The front of this sail, I needed that arc. I had to put that in the sketch. But if I'm dimensioning to all the sharp corners, then I don't need those arcs in the sketch. Now, if I do want to dimension the overall length with the fillet, then I would need the arcs inside of the sketch. So if the dimension that I need is from on the maximum arc conditions, then I need to put those arcs in the sketch. But if the dimension that I need is to the virtual sharps, in this what have now become virtual sharps, without the arc there, they are actual sharps, then I need to leave those arcs outside of the sketch. So let me discard those changes and leave it on as fillet features. Another thing that I'm not going to sketch is I'm not going to sketch anything that I can accomplish with the hole wizard. I'm not going to sketch those profiles. I'm not going to offset, and I'm rare to never going to use a sketch pattern. Let's see those three. See those 3 points. So for example, let's say that I want to put some portholes here on this. Oh, and I didn't mean to get into a sketch. I don't want that sketch. I meant to grab the hole wizard. So anything that I can accomplish with this, I'm not going to sketch. I'm just going to position it. And let's grab a line from midpoint to midpoint on there. And let's grab a segment command to say that I want, let's say, four evenly spaced portholes there. And I don't want to create instances on sketch geometry. That's going to get rid of the end ones. And then let me pick a type that's, reasonable. Even though I just want a hole here, I just want the straight through wall, no countersinks on the near side or far side or anything. I'm still going to use the hole wizard to accomplish that. And that way, again, I did not have to sketch this cross section. And very easily, in case I ever do want any changes in the future, just with a click of a button, that new profile is already sketched for me. I don't have to do that. So I'm never going to sketch anything that I could do with the hole wizard. The other thing I'm not going to sketch is, I said, I'm not going to sketch I'm very, very rarely going to do a sketch pattern or an offset. So let's take a look at this other piece that we have for our board game. And here is a place where I would potentially do a sketch pattern. The vent feature makes this sketch pattern worthwhile to me. The fact that I can have, different thicknesses on the ribs and the spars and all those inside corners automatically filleted by one single vent feature, that makes doing those lines as a circular pattern within the sketch worthwhile to me. Maybe also a wrap feature. I might need all of the sketch entities in the sketch in order to curve that around a curved face. But otherwise, I'm not going to put those in the sketch, because look at how many, it's even with just this simple shape, look at how many lines and relations and all I have to keep track of. If I could do that with features, then I am, like, for example, I'm certainly not going to mirror inside of the sketch to get the one that I want on the right hand side. I'm going to do that with a mirror feature. Here's another example, an offset. Here I have this sketch already prepared, and all the dimensions, I do need one more relation. Here's another thing that I'm not going to sketch. I'm not going to sketch a vertical construction line in order to line up the midpoint of this line with the midpoint of this edge here. I can select the midpoint of the edge, and I can control select the midpoint of the line and just put a vertical sketch relation. So I don't need the I don't need a construction line there. The relationship can do it. I also don't need the opposite side of this geometry. Notice this is an open profile. Let me sh This is what it would look like if I were to offset it. I could offset and I could window select all this, and I could even cap the ends in here with lines, right? And that's what I'm gonna end up at. That's what I want, to extrude or cut, whatever the case might be. But why have all those additional lines in my sketch when I could also accomplish that with a thin extrude feature? So in the extrusion, when I go to extrude something that is an open profile, it automatically, SOLIDWORKS automatically turns on the thin feature portion of the extrusion property manager. And I can add my material thickness to the outside of the sketch, the inside of the sketch. Maybe the dimensions that I knew were at the middle, right? The center line or the midplane. Or maybe I knew a certain amount of information in each direction from where the sketch is. I can accomplish all of that with a thin feature. So without having any additional lines. In this case, it's so simple, it's just lines, but imagine if it was even more complex, right? Arcs, other sketch entities, and all the relations that would come with it. I don't need those. I can just do it with a thin feature. Here's another example of that. Now, this one might be kind of extreme, but I just want to get you thinking on it. I want a rectangular shaped window here in my little castle, metropolis, and I've sketched just a single line and I've fully defined it. This is right the width. I've got the width here. I've got the positioning with with the midpoint of the line, vertical with the midpoint of this edge. I've got positioning off the top face there. Now let's do an extruded cut. Let's do 1 millimeter deep, and let's say that I want to put. Um, Actually, Let's make it a square. Let's say equal to this dimension here. And I'm having a little trouble picking it out of the graphics area, so let me type a 5 first, and then I'll come back and pick. There we go. Now my picking it seems to be ready to pick. But that's bonus. The fact that I can put that right, like, well, you couldn't put an equal inside of a sketch. If I drew the other 3 lines of the square, I could put an equal sketch relation. Well, I could just put an equal right here, equal to that dimension. And then again, maybe the information that I know is at the midplane of it. Again, that one is a little bit extreme. I don't know if I would just go for a line versus a square inside of a sketch, but I want to get your wheels turning and thinking about that it is a possibility. And the more complex your shape, the more you save by leaving out the sketch entities and accomplishing them with a thin feature or some other three-dimensional feature as opposed to inside of the sketch. For example, I also said here I was going to mirror the vent and the cut. If you get this unable to create vent feature, because it's trying to recreate that vent, all that information, all those options inside that vent on the other side, check the geometry pattern. Tells it, don't try to recreate all those options, just mirror over that exact same geometry. That's going to make simpler sketches easier to keep track of, easier to get them fully defined, easier to make sure that the relationships all stay correct, especially as geometry changes.